Yo, what is up guys, it's Pedro here, and in today's video I'll be talking about Eagles GM Howie Roseman's possible reaction to the Washington Commanders first round pick and how he said it was a great pick. Also, I will be talking about a possible joint practice that the Commanders will have with the Ravens and talk about the kicker that they signed. If you guys are new, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button and that notification bell as well. Let's get to 15,500 subscribers before the middle of May. We're less than 100 away. Let's get right into it. All right, so this, was a video released by the Eagles, I believe yesterday, so, Saturday, maybe Friday, and it was just going, probably through their whole draft process. I didn't watch, obviously the full video, which is probably like 20, 30, 40 minutes, I don't know. But there was a clip circulating Twitter yesterday, and then now a bunch of the beat reporters have been posting about it, about Howie Roseman, and I'm not going to play the full clip because it is on YouTube, I believe, and it's probably copyrighted. But and you guys can watch it, it's here if you look it on, on Twitter or on YouTube. But basically, he calls Adam Peters, and before the call he says, that they were saying, yeah, I don't have a good feeling about Washington. That could be, in terms of because they were trying to trade up. Whether that means they don't have a good feeling about who the Commanders are picking in terms of, all right, maybe they're picking one of our guys, or if it's, I don't think we'll be able to trade with them. That's what I took away from it. And then, he calls them, and then Peters says there's an in-division tax, which obviously does make sense. And basically the conversation kind of ends from there, and Howie Roseman hangs up, and then after that, the pick is announced, and John kind of just quote tweeted it, but he said, or Howie Roseman says, Conerly, that's a great pick. So you could take this two different ways. One, it's Josh Conerly, and he's saying it's a really good pick, which is the way I kind of took it. But then you could also take it, all right, he's saying Conerly, that's a great pick. And then he, saying that that's a good pick for the Eagles because that's not someone who they necessarily wanted. They wanted Jahad Campbell, who they ended up taking. Or you could say that, maybe they were trying to trade up for Conerly. That one I feel kind of strongly that it's not that. Who knows? Maybe it is. I think, though, he was just saying it was a good pick, and, but it wasn't a player that they were going for. That's kind of how I viewed it. The guys, apparently Roseman and Adam Peters are pretty good friends. So, him applauding that pick, kind of makes sense. But, it's always good to have someone like Howie Roseman, who's a very, very good evaluator of offensive linemen. I mean, you look at their offensive line, over the last few years, Jason Kelsey, Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson, they got, Landon Dickerson, they got a lot of tough players. I forgot the guy's name, their center. I forgot their center that, came in to replace Kelsey. I know who it is, the blonde guy. He missed part of the game against the Commanders, but he's a good evaluator of offensive linemen. So if he is saying that's a great pick, that is good for the Commanders in terms of how we view Conerly's future. It's another added stamp of approval. That's the word I was looking for, or the phrase I was looking for. But yeah, overall, interesting video there. The Commanders posted one, I believe, as well, going into their draft process. So some other stuff that I wanted to talk about. So the Commanders and Ravens, they always play, and I believe they're playing this year in the preseason. Not completely sure, but Harbaugh said he's spoken to both Commanders and Buccaneers about joint practices, but they're waiting on league in terms of preseason schedule. And yeah, that would make sense with the Commanders and Ravens. Hopefully there's no WrestleMania like the guy in the comment section, Quan, said. That was a big brawl. It was Mark Andrews mostly, and then Danny Johnson dislocated his shoulder or something. That was awful. Hopefully that doesn't happen. If they do have a joint practice again, Mark Andrews might not even be on the team at that point. They kind of, I believe, have had some trade talks with him, or including him. But yeah, that would be good. Joint practices are always good to, see how your, team's looking against other defenses, other offenses. So, the Commanders had 2 joint practices last year. Against the Jets and Dolphins, 2 teams they played in the preseason. So having at least one is good. 2 would be fine as well. You know, the Commanders under Ron Rivera didn't really do this much. I know they did against the Ravens, but that was one time in his 4 years, I believe, here. So having joint practices, I believe, is definitely a, you know, huge benefit in terms of, you know, your off-season progress and getting you ready for the season. If you do these joint practices, you don't really have to have your starters play a bunch in the preseason, because it almost is a, you know, different form of a preseason. But you're playing against, you know, starters from the other team, you know, the ones, unless, you know, any of the guys are hurt. Preseason, though, you know, I'm fine if they don't play any, you know, of the main guys in the preseason, or just play them one game, play them one quarter, like 1 or 2 possessions, and that's fine. You don't need to risk any injuries. You know, knock on wood, hopefully that doesn't happen. But these guys don't need a lot of PT in the preseason. Give it to the younger guys, like all the rookie guys, obviously, and then the younger guys from last year, like Ben Sinnott. He needs all the PT he can get. You know, Mike Sanishel doesn't really need it, but, you know, Johnny Noon, he could use some PT too. Jordan McGee, give him all that PT. He was out last year, I believe, some of the preseason with an injury. Dom Hampton, same thing. Give these guys the PT that they need to develop. And like I said, obviously, all the rookies and any other guys that, you know, they brought in that are young guys or undrafted free agents, obviously, they're going to get a lot of work. Let's see, other stuff. They signed Matt Gay. I didn't make a video about it because I don't know, I woke up late that day and everyone already posted about it. I might have talked about it in another video. 1-year deal worth over $4.25 million guaranteed. Most fully guaranteed money for a kicker on a 1-year deal in NFL history. That's crazy. And Matt Gay isn't even like insane. Last year, I believe he was 84% on his kicks. Better, you know, decent overall in his career, 50 plus yards. So, you know, it is what it is. A veteran kicker. The moment shouldn't be too big for him. Shouldn't have any issues with that. Knock on wood. But yeah, you know, you have your kicker solution heading into camp and, you know, OTA's mini camp. It gives them time to, you know, get acclimated with Tress Way and Tyler Ott, the holder. This kind of gives you the idea. Maybe they probably were looking for a kicker in the draft, and the guys that they wanted maybe got taken, and that's why they ended up going for a guy like Matt Gay as their kicker. Solid move there. A lot of guaranteed money, but, you know, it is what it is. I don't know if it's already, you know, processed in the cap, you know, for over the cap and stuff, if they already have that in there. I believe they don't, so that will, you know, decrease the cap space by, you know, 4.25-ish million, because it is fully guaranteed. But they got that kicker, don't got to worry about that. I would expect some, you know, signings to happen in the next week or two in terms of defensive ends. You know, they need another guy, whether it's a stud or just like an average starter. I think they need another guy in there. They didn't draft a single defensive end, and yeah, I think that room needs a little bit of help. The interior defensive line is good; it's fine, but the outside definitely needs some help. You got Dorrance Armstrong; that's your one like shoe, and he's your starter, and he's not elite. And then after that, you need to, you know, have someone else. Is it going to be Jean Baptiste? Is it going to be, you know, Jacob Martin, Dietrich Wise? I still think you need another guy. Zadarius Smith, I think, would be a good fit, a 1-year type of guy. But that is it for today's video. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe if you guys are new, and peace.